Shanti, how are you all? In this video, we are going to discuss about the Navratri celebrations, how they celebrate within India. It differs from state to state. So, in North India, they will actually the Navratri stands for 9 nights in a row. So, what this Navratri actually represents is a war between goddess Durga and a demon called magician. So the war takes place. Actually, the war didn't take place just for 9 nights, it took place over several years. So just as a symbol of that war, they have allotted 9 days in a year as Navratri. So it basically represents the war between the goddess and the demon, and finally, as we all can expect, she emerges out victorious. So that was on the 10th day, where we celebrate Dashara, or in South India they celebrate as Vijayadashami. So also this Navratri celebration, they worship 3 goddesses. They allot first 3 days for goddess Durga, and the next 3 days for goddess Laxmi, and the last 3 days for goddess Saraswati. So throughout India they will be doing bhajans, they'll be having dances celebrating this Navratri. There will be dances throughout night so that they can stay awake in the night. That is what is expected on Navratri. And they would not take non-vegetarian foods. They wouldn't even take foods with onion and garlic. Some people, they even take fasting, complete fasting for these 9 days. Some, they don't sleep throughout night. So if they can't afford, if their health can't cooperate, then they will do it on the final day, on the 9th day. So as per any other Indian festival, they would cook delicious foods, and they would wear new clothes. They visit temple daily. Also they lit a lamp, especially lamp made out of earthenware, and they make sure that it is completely ignited throughout for those 9 days. So it should be very surprising that there will be more than one story for each celebration, whether it's Diwali, whether it's Navratri, or any other festival. So there's also another story for Navratri, where there's a fight between God Ram and Ravan, and he comes out victorious on the 10th day, which is why they celebrate Dashara by burning the effigy of Ravan. But in South India, especially in Tamil Nadu, mostly they don't celebrate Dashara. Instead, they consider that day as Vijayadashami, a day that is considered so auspicious that they would start anything new on that day, especially joining their kids at school or college, or if they want to start a new business and so on, they would start on that day. So they think anything they start on that day, that will eventually be victorious, as it's the day of victory, Vijayadashami. There's also a big variation on how Tamil people celebrate Navratri. They have this habit of keeping Golu, which means they will arrange the mini statues of deities, so they will keep it so attractive that they will invite the kids, adult women, so they will sing songs, sometimes they will even dance. So that's how they celebrate, especially they have this celebration only in the evening. Let's now jump into the most important part of Golu celebration, and it is also the most fun part, that is keeping Golu, that is arranging toys in a step in a particular manner. And kids, they love to play with toys, so obviously they're more attracted towards this Golu. What they would do is they will have a series of steps that might be 3 in number, or 5 or 7 or 9, sometimes even 11, but the most common number of steps would be 9, as it is celebrated for 9 days. So what they would do is they keep the highest god or deities at the topmost position, and below that they would place the deities that are of lower rank, and below that they would keep religious preachers, which are obviously below them, and below them there would be Brahmins, and below that there would be ordinary people, and below that there would be animals, and below that very small animals. It should be like this. So there's a spiritual significance to this, and also they would make sure that this step is faced either eastwards or westwards. It shouldn't be in the north or south. The main reason is, so it represents the path of sun and moon, east and west, right? So it has that significance, because in India, in Hinduism, we tend to consider the full moon day auspicious, also the no moon day as auspicious. And also there's more to this Golu function. They will invite nearby kids, especially girl kids below 10 years of age. So they would decorate them, they would feed them, and they would make these girl kids happy and send them along with small gifts. So along with the girl kids, they would also invite adults, women. So they would present them with gifts like mangalium, the thread that husband ties into the neck of his wife, and they would have some fruits, sometimes the bits of clothes, and they would send them satisfied. And sometimes they would even perform devotion to the girl kids. They will wash their feet. Sometimes they would do it to adult women as well. So there is a spiritual significance for that, which we would be seeing it shortly. While decorating the girl kids, they would consider herself as Saraswati or Durga, and also while washing the feet of adult women, they would consider them as Durga Ma, and they would do that because they believe that God can come as one of the kids or one of the adult women. So that's why they do that. Actually, there's great significance in each and every act of Golu. So first, let's say the steps they take, and as I mentioned earlier, they face it, they keep it facing eastwards or westwards. The reason for that is that's the path of moon, and moon actually increases in size after no moon day and start gradually decreasing in size after full moon day. So we are all aware of that, and that's how we human souls tend to lose our power gradually, and at one point it will start imbibing more and more power. So just like moon, so it becomes brighter and brighter until it becomes a full moon, and after that it becomes darker and darker until it becomes a no moon day. Similarly, we souls were initially full bright like full moon, but they give the opposite meaning, saying that we were initially without any knowledge, without any power, and God, because in Hinduism there's a wide belief that we were first born as animals, actually as plants, then as animals, that was unicellular organism, then multicellular, then becoming animals, then becoming monkey, then becoming human. From human, after making spiritual effort, we can progress further to a saint. From that, we can still progress further spiritually into a deity, but we have to get rid of all the attachment towards this, and we have to surrender ourselves totally to God, which is the ultimate aim of one's life. But in reality, that's not the case. God did not create us as ants or plants or animals. As a matter of fact, we would always be humans. No matter how many births we take, we will be taking all births only as humans. So the same applies to animals. If, for instance, if you take a lion, it will have rebirth only as lion, birth after birth. It will never become a cat or human in any of its previous or future births. So that's a widely held misconception. Okay, let's see how I said is true. Because God initially created this world as heaven. It was more advanced in every single way when it is compared to now, the Kali Yuga. So it happened 5,000 years ago. Yes, the world was heaven in the beginning. That was 5,000 years ago. So it continues to be heaven for the first 2,500 years. That was exactly when we were born as deities. And after the completion of first 2,500 years, we start becoming normal humans as we are now. So that the last 2,500 years is what we call as hell, and we are in hell now. And God reveals this truth in the last 100 years by entering an old man's body, and he names him Brahma. So he uses Brahma's mouth to give us this knowledge that I am sharing with you now. God says, I created you full of all divine virtues, and I also gave you wealth, health, happiness, peace. You were filled with these while you were in heaven. and you lost everything when you start taking birth in hell, mainly because you become slaves of these five vices, namely lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. These five vices combinedly called Satan or Maya. So we have become slaves of Maya, and this is the rule of Maya, and this Maya is also called Ravan. So it is not true, as mentioned in Ramayana, that there was someone with 10 heads called Ravan. No, nothing like that happened throughout this time cycle. This time cycle is just 5,000 years, not lakhs or millions of years as widely believed. It is wrongly written in scriptures, but it is just 5,000 years old. And there's great significance to this time cycle. It is called a kalpa. Whatever happens in 5,000 years, that is one kalpa, it keeps repeating kalpa after kalpa accurately. There wouldn't be even the slightest change. To understand it very easily, if you are watching this video right now, it obviously means you watched this video 5,000 years back on this very same day, on this very same time, and you will be watching this same video 5,000 years after 5,000 years. So it is that accurate. So what's the difference between heaven and hell? As I mentioned earlier, they would be free of these five vices, and they have become slaves of these five vices. How is it possible for them to be free of these five vices? Because they did not have the body consciousness like us, because we generally consider ourselves to be this body, which is why we spend our whole life trying to satisfy the sensual pleasures. But these deities, they would consider themselves totally separate from this body. Who are they then? They considered themselves to be the imperishable soul that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, which is why Hindus keep bindis right here in between the eyebrows. That's exactly where we exist. We are not this body. This body is more like a vehicle, and the soul is more like a driver that operates that vehicle. He can operate the vehicle as much as he wants. Despite that, he is not that vehicle, he is just an operator. So as long as he is aware of this fact, he can control that vehicle. Due to any circumstance, if he fails to realize that he is different from the vehicle, then the vehicle will take control over him. That will result in a tragic accident. Likewise, while we were in heaven, we were completely aware that we are not this perishable body. Instead, we are the imperishable souls. But after the completion of first 2,500 years, what happens in the beginning of hell is we start forgetting that we are this imperishable soul. Instead, we start considering ourselves to be this body. So as I mentioned earlier, thereby we became slaves for these five vices. Thereby we had to face severe pain, because the end result of these five vices is nothing but pain and suffering. So that's when we started to remember our Father God and start building temples, churches, mosques, start writing religious scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Bible and Quran. Despite that, we couldn't find happiness, we couldn't find peace, because we were not aware of the fact that it is because we became body conscious that we start accumulating pain and sorrow. Nobody is there to reveal this truth because nobody is aware of that either. So that is when God comes towards the end of Kali Yuga, in the last 100 years to be exact. God enters an old man's body and he reveals this secret, and he says, you were originally the deities in the beginning. So this India happens to be the heaven in the beginning, which is why we still see Hindus praying those deities without even realizing that we ourselves were deities in the beginning. So basically what they are doing is they are worshipping themselves. And God reveals this and he says you have to become like deities again. You know why? Because that heaven is going to come again, because it's a time cycle. In a clock, after the completion of 12, it will go back to 1. Similarly, after the completion of hell, it will become heaven again. Of course, there will be a world destruction in between that, in which this old world gets renewed into heaven. So before that, we have to possess all the characters that is characteristic of the deities, because it is the characters that we possessed at the time of death that continues after death in the next life. So if we possess the characters that deities possessed in heaven, then we will be entering heaven, which means we'll be taking birth in heaven. What happens before that is, during the world destruction that happens as a result of the Third World War and also the natural calamities, we souls leave this body and we will enter this world of light called the Supreme Abode, which is also called Parandam or Parlok. So this is where God always dwells. God always exists here as a point of light. Yes, God is also a point of light, just like us. We exist as a tiny star in between the eyebrows. God exists as a tiny star in this golden red colored world called Parandam, and the name of this God is Shiva. And it is this very same God Christians call as Heavenly Godfather, and it is this same God Muslims call as Allah. Yes, God is one, His way is one, and He gives that way only in the end. So for whatever we believe God Himself has given through messengers, it's not at all God's message, which is why people are fighting, saying our religion is better than yours, our teachings are better than yours. So they would fight, they would even kill each other because their religion says so. Do you think God will ask you to fight? Because it is mentioned in all major religions, right? So that's not God's role. God's role comes in the end. Till that, who ruled us? Satan. Of course, all the religions were created by Satan. Satan doesn't mean a separate person or entity. It just represents these 5 vices. This lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego, it exists in men and women. So this is combinedly called as 10-headed Ravan. And this hell is the kingdom of Ravan, heaven is the kingdom of Ram. So we will have to go there. So here God wouldn't come in heaven because He makes us His children into the kings and queens. He doesn't come there. He comes in the hell to teach us to become the residents of heaven. So that's why God is called love. God is called truth because He teaches the truth. if God gives the truth, God speaks the truth, if God is truth, it obviously means everything else is false. So, what is God's message? Well, He said He reveals that we were deities, we would have to become deities, and we have to possess the characters of deities to become deities. How's that possible? Because deities weren't aware of what lust is, but in Kali Yuga, everybody knows what lust is. Of course, they are immersed in lust. So, how can they come out of it? There is only one way, by remembering God as such. So far, in no religion there is any mention of how God looks like, what His characteristics are, what His role in this world drama is. So it is only now we know that directly from God, because it is only God who is capable of giving His true introduction. So He is giving His introduction that He is also a soul, which is, we call Him as Supreme Soul, Param Atma. Now all we need to do is to remember God as a point of light that shines in a golden red colored sky. And before that, we have to consider ourselves to be the imperishable soul and not this body. So we have to forget this body altogether with its relations in this old world, because if you tend to think about them repeatedly, then that thought would definitely come at the time of death. You know what would happen by that? That thought itself will make you take birth again in hell. So already we are suffering like hell in hell. So if you take another birth, so there's no words to explain the pain we have to endure. So that is why God says, remove attachment from everybody and just attach yourself to the one God, our Father. So we need to keep on remembering Him as a point of light. And also we have to remember His teachings. We have to turn over His teachings, which is called Murli, which is being taught in all Rajayogi meditation centers, that is spread across the globe. If you want to know the details, the address of those meditation centers, you can always message me or send WhatsApp at this number, +91 98 946 71743. So this is the actual knowledge. So this is the path of knowledge, where God gives only the knowledge. He doesn't give any story as mentioned in religious scriptures. So as I mentioned earlier, they always face these religious toys eastwards or westwards in Golu, because just like moon in full moon day, we souls were full moon in the beginning, that is, we were filled with the power, with all divine qualities. But what happens is it gradually decreases, just like moon gradually fades. So here towards the end, it became more like a no moon day, which means it has lost all its strength, which is why even religious preachers, they fall for lust, because nobody has the power to conquer lust in the end, which is when God comes and fills us with power, not by Himself, but by giving the way, so that we have to make our own effort. Because if God were to fill the power to humans all by Himself, then He would have to make everybody equal. So that's not going to work, because it's a kingdom. We need king, we need servants to the king, we need subjects. So who decides that? God doesn't decide that. He just gives the teaching to become the #1 emperor, Narayan. So he is the number one emperor of heaven, which is why in Narayan temple they have this celebration of opening ceremony of heaven in Ekadasi, because he is the first king of heaven. So God gives this knowledge basically to make us humans into the highest deity, Sri Narayan. The teaching is same, but how we acquire that teaching, how much faith we have that we have in it, how much faith we have that it is indeed God who is giving this teaching. So it all influences our effort in becoming soul consciousness. So if you become fully soul conscious, only then you will be able to take birth in heaven right in the beginning, or else you will be taking birth at a later stage. Once you take birth, you can't go back. You have to enter the birth and death cycle, which means you have to take continuous rebirths until you reach the end of this kalpa, where the world gets destroyed. Only then you can go back to our sweet home called Parandam. So this is the reason they place the Golu eastwards or westwards, so that we can be reminded of the things that moon undergoes during a course of month. So the soul gradually decreases its light, that is the spiritual power, and becomes zero in the end when God comes and fills it with full power. So it becomes full moon. Again it loses its power gradually to become no moon. And coming to the steps, these are the same steps that we find in Swami Ayyappan temple in Kerala. So usually when they have this Swami Ayyappan idol, it will always be accompanied by 18 steps. So he will always be placed in the top step. The reason is this. So this is the top position of that step. So that is where we were with full power. Then we gradually loses power, which is represented as the decrease in steps. So finally we reach the lowest step. That is where we are now. That is why we are at the level of the first step, the lowest step, right? So God or deity or Swami Ayyappan, he was placed at the top, which means it is the same Ayyappan that was in the top once have become the follower or devotee in the end and sitting in the last step. They don't realize that. So it is the step. I'm in the last step. He's in the top step. So it is from there I descended. But in the path of devotion, they give the explanation in reverse. They say by performing devotion we will be progressing in the step, but that's not true. By doing devotion only, we are actually decreasing in the steps. We are losing our power. So it is only by taking this knowledge and remembering God as a point of light we can reach that top level. So that's the thing. So the highest God, especially the three gods, which is called Trimurti in Hindi, Brahma, Vishnu and Shankar, they were placed at the top, and below that all other deities, and below that the saints of Hinduism, and below that devotee, and below that animals, and so on. So it is from that deity position we have gradually stepped down to the place where we are now. And regarding the animals that's placed in the bottom steps, it doesn't mean that we become animals. It just means our characters resemble that of animals. That is, we reach a point that we can no longer use our brain like deities, like humans. We start thinking like animals, because animals, they just fight with each other all the time. They'll just have lust for each other all the time. So that's the condition of humans in Kali Yuga, which is why they have placed animals in the bottom steps. And coming to the religious story, they say in the scripture regarding Mahishasuravardhini, which is the fight between Lord Durga and the devil magician. So what it implies is, it's not the fight, because do you think a fight or war will be considered sacred? Nope. So what it actually represents is the war that takes place within us while we were in the bottom steps, as we are in Kali Yuga. So by remembering God as a point of light, and also by imbibing the knowledge that he delivers through Murali, we gradually progress back to number 1 stage, which is Laxmi Narayan stage. So we have to conquer the negative thoughts, the vices, the vicious thoughts. How can we achieve that? By churning over Murali points, and also by remembering God as a point of light, we will gain that power. And the more we remember God, more we can feel a strange trembling sensation in between the eyebrows, which means we are actually receiving the power directly from God. And since it is the soul that receives that power, and the soul exists in between the eyebrows, we feel this sensation right here. So what happens as a result of regular meditation is, you will find yourself coming out of these 5 vices completely. So Mahishasuran is nothing but the evil things that we possess during Kali Yuga, and we are now becoming Kali or Durga, where we fight within ourselves in getting all the evil things out of us by remembrance and the weapons of knowledge, that is the Murali points. So that's how we become conquerors of those devil thoughts, which is celebrated as Dashara, where we conquered over vices. So it doesn't represent any external fights. They can't put it in a story form what's happening inside us. That's why they have made such story as a war that takes place outside. So this internal war is represented as Mahishasuramardhini, as Mahabharat war, as Ramayana war, and so on. So it is from this all religions came into being. So even the holy war, jihad represented in Quran, represents the same war. It is not the violent war as they widely believe. So actually those 9 days of Navratri represents the last 100 years where we make effort in conquering these vices. What they basically do on these 9 days in the evening is, they will chant or repeat a mantra continuously for 100 times or 300 times, sometimes even 1008 times. So what the meaning of that mantra is nothing but welcoming those deities, welcoming Sri Durga for the first 3 days, welcoming Sri Laxmi for the next 3 days, welcoming Saraswati in the last 3 days. So what does it mean? Actually we were Laxmi in the beginning. We were Narayan in the beginning. So it is there, but it is sleeping. That power is sleeping. We have to awaken that power, which is why they are calling upon that power without even realizing that it is them who has to be awakened. So they are actually seeing their photos or their statues without even realizing that it is them. They are performing such devotion. And also, see, they are inviting these kids. Who are these kids? They are imagining those kids to be the Lord. Actually, it is the Lord. It was this kid, this same kid was Lord, possibly the Lord in the beginning, because not everybody who comes in heaven, actually, everybody that once resided in heaven, they would all be in Kali Yuga, because they couldn't escape in the middle. But not all residents of hell belongs, they were also the resident of heaven. No, that's not the case, because in heaven the population itself is just 33 crore, but now the human population is 1000 crores, so there's a big difference. And especially in the beginning of Satyug, this heaven, this yug is called Satyug. In the beginning of Satyug, the population is just 9 lakhs. Just think how very little the population was in the beginning, and gradually it gets added up, and in the end there are so many now. So there is a chance that this kid was once Sri Laxmi herself. So, and not only that, the one who is performing, who is washing the feet of that girl could also be Sri Laxmi in the beginning. So they don't realize that, because while they were Lakshmi, they were the queen of the entire planet, not only to earth. Everything from sky, water, earth, everything belonged to them, belonged to us while we were deities. So in Pushpa Viman we can fly to any place we want. There wouldn't be any restriction, no borders, no visas, nothing. You're free to go anywhere. You have that enormous power while we were deities. So if you want something to happen, it will happen in that very moment. For example, if you want it to rain, it will rain in that very instant. You will be surrounded by birds, animals, whenever you have the thought of it. And if you want a particular bird to sing for you, just if you signal through your finger, it will start singing for you. So you will be the master of the whole universe. That's going to happen within the next 20 years. So be ready. So we had been performing devotion without even knowing that it is us that we are praying to. So now the thing is, you have to awaken yourself by remembering God. You have to fill yourself with power, and you will become the deity again. So this is what Navratri truly stands for. Similarly, they say about the fight between Ram and Ravan, right? It is the same fight. So we are fighting against Maya, which is Ravan, which is these vices. So we have to burn him completely. So only when you burn him completely, that can be called a victory, which is celebrated as Dasara on the 10th day. By burning the statue of Ravan without even realizing that he is indeed exists within us, we have to burn him. So we can get that power only from God by remembering him. Hope you would have understood fully about this Navratri and its spiritual significance. So now it's time to awaken the inner Durga, awaken the inner Sri Laxmi. So you have to awaken yourself up. So the only way out is to learn Murli daily. It is available in all Rajayogi meditation centers. As I mentioned earlier, you can always leave me a message in this number so that I can give you the address of the Rajayogi meditation center in your area. +919894671743. So feel free to share this with your brothers and relatives, and also if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you will be updated with more and more videos of this sort. Also, if you like this video, feel free to hit the like button and also leave your valuable comment in the comment section. Om Shanti. Thanks again for watching. Happy Navratri.